repeat the nonconformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to another Positive Blatherings, and I'm always excited when I bring media folk into the studio because it's kind of like turning the tables on them because they're usually doing the interviews, and now Mark Gruba is in the hot seat.
Hey.
You know him from Channel 8 in the morning, well-known anchor, the unofficial face of Rochester.
Definitely unofficial. Good to be with you, my friend.
Thank you. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
We used to trade quips back when I was in radio and doing the morning shift.
Yeah, two of the 3 or 4 people on Twitter at that hour of the day.
Dude, exactly.
It's pretty easy to see what was being posted.
Yeah, right. So I wanted to bring you in because, I wanted to get you in here for quite some time, but there was a whole pandemic thing happened, and
yeah.
And
it's a long list in front of me too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. No, there's not actually. No, I think I remember asking you when I first started the podcast, when I was still at Fickle, but you know how it is.
I do. Time flies.
Time flies. It's like, what? 2020, we're almost done with 2021. It's blowing my mind. Kids
crazy.
Back to school now. Today was
the day.
Today was the day.
Yeah, they're hopefully in class as we speak.
Right. Right. It's weird to think that it's been the better part of 2 years since my kids have actually been out of the house for more than a short period of time.
Yeah.
Let alone to go to school. But maybe your kids are better because they're in like extracurriculars or something. But my kids turned into hermits. They turned into nocturnal hermits.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, it was kind of strange.
Yeah, I think that I think that for my kids there was some of that. I think we consciously tried to find things for them to do and try to keep them on some kind of a schedule. Certainly challenging to say the least. Definitely extracurricular activities helped, no question about it. It brought some normalcy into a totally abnormal situation.
Yeah.
But, it's funny, along the way you could see how it affected them, how it wasn't the same. As adults, I think we're conditioned to go with the flow and try to kind of make it work. And certainly as parents, you think about sort of modeling behavior for your kids, to kind of sort of present that sense of normalcy. So even when things are off kilter and maybe you're not having a great day, it's not translating into their world.
Right.
Even in spite of that, you could see that it just wasn't the same. And frankly, even some apprehension about going back full-time in person, It's interesting. The concept seems so foreign to them, even though that's really all they knew up until a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take some doing for all these kids, not just ours, but all of these kids to kind of reestablish that, hey, this is normal. This is what we do. We show up every day and we listen and try and learn a little something.
Right. Yeah, my kids were. I have 2 kids that struggle with anxiety anyway. Mm-hmm. So adding that whole level of anxiety from the pandemic was just mind-boggling for us as parents. It really put us as parents to the test. Mm-hmm. I don't know how we did. They're still alive. They're still healthy. So I think we pulled through okay.
Yeah.
But if anything, the last year and a half has really helped us to put mental health for the kids more in focus, which I think was very necessary.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that people just sort of glazed over. Oh, suck it up. You could do this. You got this,
Mm-hmm.
No big deal. Hey, that's what we have to do. Mm-hmm. You don't have a mortgage. And then you realize, wow, this is really, really affecting them in ways that I didn't even think was possible.
I would agree. You think about all the different things that go on in their lives. And I think the thing that put a fine point on is things that as adults seem trivial and insignificant you realize in the mind of a child what an important role those things play in their
Yeah.
life. And when those things are not right or taken away from them, boy, that has a major impact on them. And I think that was something that we really picked up on early. Like, hey, we really have to be attentive to this, and not just assume that everything's going to be all right.
Right.
So
I don't know. Are your kids old enough for high school yet, or they okay?
Yeah, I got a junior. She's up at the high school.
Okay.
And then I got 2 in middle school. Yeah, just left the elementary school scene.
It's almost like that was the easy time.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. I have a kid. My son just started college. Okay, and this is what blew my mind. We're talking about something that we did 5 years ago. To me, to you, 5 years is like, right? A blink. Like, 5 years. Was it 5 years? Oh my gosh, it was 5 years ago. That was that was like a quarter of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like 5 years ago. I can't even, it's just amazing. Just the perception of time as you get older. And speaking of time, how long have you been in the news game on the TV?
Yeah, a long time. Yeah, not the blink of an eye, that's for sure. I started, right out of college. My first job was as a sports producer at an NBC station in Hartford, Connecticut. So I was a behind-the-scenes guy, helping those on-air guys.
You sound like you have like the downstate New York, New Jersey, the tri-state accent a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. That's
a touch of it.
Yeah, a touch of it. Perhaps.
We could smell our own.
Yeah. Both of my parents are Midwesterners. They're from Minnesota.
Really?
So they moved to New Jersey. So we didn't really have it in the house growing up.
Yeah.
But just environmentally, yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. My brother still lives there. He's lived there his whole life. And there's a distinct difference between he and I now. He's got it a lot thicker than I do.
He's more Jersey.
At this point. He's definitely more Jersey than I am these days. It's true. Yeah. No, it's interesting how that changes.
We're from Long Island. We moved down to Florida when I was 5. So I grew up really not like you, kind of being in a different environment from where I was originally born. My parents still have that. It's like they just got off the Long Island Expressway just now.
Right.
They still sound like that.
Yeah.
So that had to be interesting, starting off in an area that's one of the biggest markets in the media world.
It was, and it was a great learning ground. This is a long time ago. Again, this is early 90s, 92, 93. I worked with a guy named Beasley Reese. He was a former NFL player.
I know that name.
Played for the Giants. And he was a guy at the time, he was doing sports in Hartford at the NBC station, but he was also doing games for the network, NFL games, and he was part of the Olympic coverage for the network. And so, I learned at the feet of a master in terms of kind of how the business works, that he had this great blend of looking like he had it all under control, at ease all the time. And it just kind of, just easy breezy. But I could see how hard he worked behind the scenes, to make it look that easy. And that was a great thing to witness early on. It kind of taught me a sense of not only work ethic, but also sort of how to draw a distinction between working hard and then being able to perform. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just, not work so hard that when it's time to perform, you're wrapped up in the work, that you can just kind of let it go and be yourself.
See, that's one thing that I've always admired about anchors, news anchors. And we've done a few interviews where, like, you were helping us out with, coverage on the movie and things like that.
Yeah.
And having spoken to you just in passing and then seeing how you held yourself on camera, I've always been amazed at how there's that switch that you're able to flip on. When the light comes on, it's like boom. And we could do that in radio too, but it's different with the visual part of it, because I could be sitting here and making cross eyes to someone across the room while I'm speaking and nobody can tell.
Yeah.
but you've got the whole body's got to be right there in the moment. And that's got to be one heck of a challenge. I'm thinking, especially when things aren't going 100% the way you want. You know, not everything's perfect but yet you have to be there. You've got to be like, oh, this is, my feet are on fire, but
Yeah, right. That's the trick.
How long did it take you to get that good?
I don't know if I've
Your whole career.
I don't know if I've gotten there, but
well, that's a good answer. But still, you from our point of view, you've got there.
Yeah.
From the viewer's point of view, from you yourself, we're all our own worst critics. So you might be like, I'm not there yet.
I would say this, that starting in sports really helped, because so much of sportscasting is ad-libbing.
Yeah.
Even within the body of a newscast. Obviously if it's a live sporting event, the whole thing's ad-libbed. You're talking to it in real time.
Yeah.
But even if you're doing highlights after the fact in a sportscast, so much of that's ad-libbed. And so I think it teaches you early on to be lighter on your feet, to kind of have things not go right, and figure out where you're going to go. One of the things, there's a million axioms in television. One of them is that it's a business of plan Bs. You've always got to know where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always mean you get there smoothly, but somewhere in the back of my mind, there's always something that, I kind of know where I'm going to go if something goes wrong. Hey, if this tape doesn't roll, what do we do? If we toss to James and he's not ready for the weather, or his mic isn't working, what do we do? There's just something back there that kind of, after a while, you have a sense of how to handle that. And frankly, over the last year and a half, with all of the sort of spontaneous press conferences related to COVID, we did a lot of broadcasting where it was outside of the body of a regularly scheduled newscast, where it's scripted and there's a rundown, there's an order, there's a plan, so to speak. A lot of that is kind of off the cuff. I think having done sports prior to that experience, I felt a lot more comfortable in those situations, because I felt like I could roll with it no matter what happened.
Was that your original trajectory to go into sports and sportscasting?
Yeah.
And then
100%.
And then at some point, obviously, it drifted.
It's interesting. I always joke, I now do the two things I said I would never do. Mornings and news. When I got into the business, in my early 20s in sports, and my whole world, it was, 2:30 to 11:30, and you'd leave the station at 11:30 to find out what's going on in the world. Go out, with a group of friends and have a night. Yeah, I went from, going to bed at 2:33 in the morning to getting up at 2:33 in the morning. But what I had to sort of come to understand, and I think I sort of made that shift before I even realized why. But I just think, and you certainly understand this, as your life moves on, your priorities change. And things that matter to you and what you may have valued in your 20s maybe is not the same in your 30s or 40s or 50s. And I think that's kind of what happened to me. I think that ordering my life in a way where I could be around my wife and my children more was a lot more important to me than being in Orchard Park on a Sunday for a Bills game, even this Sunday, for the opener.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing, and I love sports, still do. And if the right offer came tomorrow, I sure would consider it, for sure, because it's in my blood. I have a passion for it. But the one thing that I've really come to appreciate about news, and I think you'll understand this because it really relates a lot to our interactions, is that you cut such a wider swath. I've met so many different kinds of people that are into so many different kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'm talking from like recycling lithium-ion batteries to some guy who wants to make a movie, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And I've learned to really appreciate that. For me, just other people, I think when you get into this business, you're naturally curious. If you're not, you don't last very long. And I think if you're truly naturally curious, that all different kinds of things are of interest to you. Maybe to certain degrees versus another, might not spend hours on end studying, the life cycle of a lithium-ion battery, which
is fascinating, by the way.
Right, that's the point. But it does interest me, someone that does get it, that is passionate about it, and has a reason for trying to better the world through it. That's interesting to me. And I think if you tell that story the right way, other people find that interesting too. That's it.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Going back to before you got into college, was it a path that you knew you were going to take?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I always thought I would be a writer. And I figured, maybe like a newspaper writer, a sports writer. When I got into college, I wrote for the school paper, and I became an editor for the school paper, sports section. And I kind of thought that was the path I would pursue. And then I did an internship. A buddy of mine had done an internship at the TV station, the NBC station in Hartford, WVIT, and had kind of opened the door for me to have a similar opportunity. So I did the internship, and I remember that first day I walked out of that building, and I was like, well, I now know what I want to do. I mean, it was instantaneous for me. And the difference for me was when I would write. I would go to a basketball game. I'd watch the game. I'd make my notes. I'd go back to my dorm room, and I would think about it, and I would start. And this was before the internet. I would write. I'd write a lead, and then I decided I didn't like that, and I'd scritch it out, and I'd do it again. And eventually, I would kind of get it the way I wanted it. I'd go into the room where the computers were for the school paper, and then I would build the story. And that took hours. It was just a multi-hour process. And the thing that I loved about television instantaneously was the immediacy of it. That I went in on that first day and I logged a UConn BC men's basketball game. It was a 4:00 tip on CBS. Game ended at 6. Newscast started at 6. And 20 minutes later, those highlights were on the air. The guy who was doing the sports that day, a guy named Steve Savard, looked at me at like 5 or 6 and he said, "Give me 4 baskets that tell the story of this game. Go." And I looked at my notes and I went, well, you got to show this one because it showed UConn taking the lead in the first half. Got to show this one because he was the leading scorer. You want to probably get that into the highlights somewhere. Got to show this because it was an unbelievable dunk. And then this last one kind of punctuated the win. And that was it. And literally, 15 minutes later, this guy's on the air going word for word what I told him. And I was just like, that's for me.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But that was for me. It was like a moth to a flame. I was drawn to it immediately. I guess some people would view it as pressure, but for me, it was just like that sense, that adrenaline rush. I was like, I want to be a part of this. And as I said, I started behind the scenes. I did that for a couple of years, and I got to the point where I was very good at that. And I probably had 2 tracks at that point. I mentioned I worked with Beasley Reese. And he probably could have helped me get into New York and get to the network level as a producer, and I probably could have gone that route. But I just, I was like any kid in my 20s who loved sports. I wanted to do it. Mm. I wanted to go from the guy that put it all together and then handed it off at the end of the night to be the guy that took it at the end of the night and went and performed it. And I went that path. And now I'm doing news 20 years later, 30 years later. So I don't know if it was a successful journey, but it's been quite the journey.
Just when did you get to Rochester?
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Was it 20 years ago?
Yeah, I got here in December of '99.
And did you start anchoring right then?
Yep. Yeah, I came here.
Here for the anchoring job?
Yeah, I was a sports anchor at a small station in West Virginia, and went there in '96, and I spent 3 years there. And in '99, I got an offer to come to Rochester, and I took it. And I came here, and so I was the weekend sports anchor at Channel 10, and and I joke, I got here 4 weeks before the Music City Miracle, and it took them darn near 20 years to win, to get back to the playoffs and ultimately win a playoff game. So I felt like I had some role in that. So I was glad the Bills finally turned things around. I was feeling the weight of it.
It's weird because I stopped with any sports interest years and years ago. Yeah. And I've always been fascinated by guys like yourself who they know all the players, they know all the stats, they know what's coming up, they know what games are going to be a pain, they know which ones are pivotal, mm-hmm. which ones are important. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I have no clue. Mm-hmm. That's just me. Like some guys would like to, if there's a football game on, it doesn't matter who's playing, they're watching it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Jaws is on. Oh, I've seen that 700 times. I'll watch that again. Yeah. I don't know why, My whole family loves. They're all football fans. They're all like, and they're down in Florida, so they're all Dolphins fans. My apologies.
Yeah.
But it just never clicked for me. But there was also a lot of things that didn't click for me in my 20s.
Yeah. Well,
and so I really I've always been fascinated and actually maybe a little bit jealous of people who go into college, they know what they're going to do, or they think they know what they're going to do, and then they find it. Like, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to find what you still do and you still love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's times when I'm not totally sure I've figured out what I'm supposed to be doing. I do love what I do. I've done it for a long time. I've done the sports. I've done the news. But there's times when I wonder, like, did I miss my call? Is there something else that I would have been better off doing? I don't know. I wonder about that.
Song and dance man, perhaps?
Yeah, perhaps. You never know. There's still time.
But you being a news anchor, you also have the opportunity of working with a lot of really great organizations in town. They ask you to MC, and you do a lot of community work. And I think, is that how important is the community aspect, in your job? Did you ever was that something you considered back in the day, that it would be such a community draw, that you'd be connected so much to the community?
Yeah, I think the short answer is no. I think that's something that came over time.
Yeah.
As you got to meet more people and get a sense of what these organizations are really doing in our community, and I think as you mature too, as you get a little bit older, you have a family and you start, experiencing different things through that, you start realizing, wow, what a vital role some of these organizations play in our community. It's become an essential aspect of what I do. It is the most gratifying aspect of what I do. I don't think I would still be doing what I do if that aspect of my work didn't exist. If I was simply reporting on the murder and the mayhem and all the stuff that we have to talk about, it's important. If there wasn't a balance for that, a foil for that, if there wasn't a sense of the good and the interesting that's going on in this community, I think I would have been gone a long time ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just, to me, it's funny. One of the last things I did before I came over here today is I just did an interview today with Andreas Delfs, the new music director at the RPO. Fascinating guy, and literally, as part of what I do, I put out a tweet. I posted the story on the web, and I put out a tweet with a link to the story. And the last thing I typed in that tweet was #BestOfRock. And I find, for me, that's kind of like my signal to anybody that follows me on Twitter, all two of you, that for me, like, this is what's special about our community. And I believe that the RPO falls into that category. I think it's
absolutely,
it's something that you just don't find in a lot of cities this size. You don't find it in a lot of cities larger than Rochester. But it also goes to so many other organizations. And obviously, if I start rattling them off, I'm going to miss 1,000. But Veterans Outreach Center, Mary Carriola, Boys and Girls Clubs, Camp Good Days and Special Times, Al Siegel Community. It goes on and on and on. What a vital role these organizations play in our community. It's been a privilege to be able to kind of help share their message and raise awareness for what they do, because this would be a different place without them, no question.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've never thought in a million years that I would be living in Rochester, New York.
Me either.
My wife is from Webster. And I met her down in Florida, and that's where things blossomed. But here I am. And I just got sick of South Florida to the point where I was like, we got to get out of here. And here's where we came. And I love it here. And there's a lot of people, I hear people complaining about Rochester all the time for this or that. And I'm like, where else have you lived in this great country of ours. Most of them have not lived anywhere else. So you know how it is. When you've never seen anything else, what do you know? And you're going to complain about it. But
Yeah.
man, to be living in a concrete jungle like South Florida, Miami to Palm Beach is one big, freeway. To come here and it's like, it's the what is it? The biggest little town or something? The biggest small town. It's just great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. For me, I was able to sort of growing up in the tri-state area, the New York City tri-state area, northern Jersey. For me, I could see all of the things that I loved about that area where I grew up, minus most of the trappings.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would describe. That's how I began to describe Rochester to people who had never been here or were coming here for a visit. I think it has a lot to offer. Now, that being said, look, we live here. We know that it's not a perfect city. There are a lot of things we're working through. But that just, in my mind, that makes Rochester like every other place. That no place is utopia. No place is perfect. But yes, there's a lot to like about this place. Check back with me on January 8th when it's 4 degrees out. But yeah, no. In spite of the bitter cold is tough. But there's so much to like about being here. No question.
If you ask my parents, they'd say that the Villages is a utopia, but I don't know.
We'll find out one day.
Right?
Maybe.
Do they give you a golf cart when you buy your house? Does it come with a golf cart?
I think it does.
That would be very cool if it did.
I think it does.
So what does Mark Gruba do to let go of the mayhem of the news and this tough schedule and everything? What do you do?
Well, you hit on one. I do like to play golf. I don't play nearly as much as I would like to, but I do like to play. I do find it to be a nice little escape. It's a good getaway. I love music, always have. So a lot of times the escape, the getaway is just a 20-minute ride in the car with me and some tunes. And then obviously, like most parents, I'm living in the world of my children.
Yeah.
But I enjoy that. I don't feel trapped by that or burdened by it. I really kind of love seeing life through their eyes. I think my political platform is the 36-hour day. I just want to get 12 more hours into the day. So if you want that, vote for me. I would like a little bit more time for me, a little bit more time for my wife and I. Because so much revolves around the children, but I do escape into that. When I'm in their world, I'm loving it.
Yeah. And the thing is that so we have one child in college who just started. We have a senior, and we have a freshman. And I know we're talking about it now. We're like, in a few years, before we'll blink our eyes, and we'll be empty nesters. And it's kind of exciting. It's a little scary. At the same time, as I'm like, let's see, I'm pushing 50. I don't want to think about that. But at the same time, there's all these things that we can plan to do now. It's like, hey, we don't have to worry about that. We can just go.
Yeah.
We're going to wait for the weekend? Okay, great.
Yeah, my wife and I have had that same,
it's weird.
fantasy, if you will. It's just us. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel bad about it.
It's quiet, too, sometimes.
I know. I feel bad though. I'm like, oh, am I wishing the kids away? Am I? No, I'm not wishing them away, but I'm looking forward to me time.
Right. I agree.
And me time is important.
Yeah. I think, what I think I'm learning, and I'm just on the other side of that 50 hill. I hate to admit it, but I'm living there. I've gotten the AARP literature. It's it's exciting. I think you learn to kind of appreciate all of it, right? To me, if you can kind of create a little bit of balance, it's all good. Creating the balance is near impossible. That's the trick, is kind of finding time for everything. For me, and you'll appreciate this, you work those hours. For me, the loser in the equation is rest, is sleep. I just don't get it,
It's not good. That's bad health.
It's tough. But I think you find most people that work that shift will sing that same song.
Yeah.
That they just can't. Well, first of all, you work 5 days a week, regardless of what days it is. And then in theory, you have 2 days off. And when you work that shift, Yeah, like for me, I can't stand that. I'm not getting up at 3 a.m. on my day off. I'm going to sleep in until I'm rested, then I'm going to get up and start my day. So you never fully commit to it. And I think as a result, you're always kind of borrowing time to get to the next event.
Yeah.
When
I finally got out of doing the morning routine, I was waking up at the usual time for about a week. I would wake up, I'd go back to sleep. And now my wife lets me sleep. It's like 8:30 and I'm still in bed and I'm like, oh, this is weird.
yeah.
I can't do that. Yeah. It's nice every once in a while, but I feel like I've gotten so used to being like half the day is gone by 10 a.m. that, but it's fun.
I've always been a night owl, and that's why I say I'm doing the thing I never thought I would do was work early mornings. I'm a night owl by nature. Even as a little guy, my parents would tell me stories about, I'd be creeping down and they'd be having to put me back in bed. I've always loved being up late.
I still do.
And I just don't do it as much. I guess being up late for me now is just a little bit earlier.
Right.
Being up late on like London time,
Yeah, the wife and I were talking about that the other night. It's 9:30. What the heck are we still doing up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can remember when I first started the mornings. I would get into bed at like 8, maybe a little before 8, and then it would kind of slowly creep back. And I can remember the first time I was still up for the start of the 10 o'clock news, and I was out of my mind over that. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to function in the morning? And I hate to say it, but now with everything that's going on, my kids the ages that they're at, I'm usually up that time of the night. Very rare that I'm down and fast asleep before 10.
You sleep when you're retired.
That's it. And occasionally I catch a nap here or there to kind of keep me going.
Now, are you when you do the nap thing? Is it like a 20-minute, 30-minute like power nap kind of thing, or are you 2 hours?
All of the above.
Yeah, whatever you can get.
It's whatever it is. Sometimes, like I said before we started, I'll fall asleep. I don't even realize I've fallen asleep. And 15 minutes goes by, and I've got to, one of the kids has got to go somewhere, and they, nudge me and say, "Hey, we got to get going." Oh, and I'm like, "Oh, that felt good. 15 minutes." And
right.
Little recharge of the batteries, and sometimes I roll over, and it's 2 hours later, and I'm like, "Ooh, that wasn't good," because you catch that second wind.
Yeah, and now you're going to be up, till 11,
and then it is harder to get down. Yeah, right.
When I worked for the cruise lines, we would have. I worked in the main office in Miami, but we would go out on the ships a lot, and there would be things that we were doing, and different video shoots and whatnot. And there would be times where we'd be like, "All right, well, we've got an hour to kill, or we've got 45 minutes to kill." Mm-hmm. And I could remember going back to my cabin, setting my alarm, and getting in like a 17-minute nap. Mm-hmm. And falling right asleep, and then wake up 17 minutes. I'm like, ready to go. Those little power naps are just the best.
They are, and I'm the exact same way. My joke is I can fall asleep mid-sentence.
Oh yeah,
and it doesn't matter where. Sitting in a chair, reclined on the couch, whatever.
You ever nodded off at work? I mean, it's probably a ridiculous question.
Yeah, I have, and I've done it intentionally.
Just kick back for a little snooze.
In the mornings, we're on 5 to 7 a.m. and then between 7 and 9 a.m. we do local cut-ins from the network, CBS mornings, and so it'll be like 8 o'clock, and I'll be back on at 8:20, and I'm just sitting there and just close the eyes and just kind of rest them a little bit, and I feel like I never go all the way away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're just chilling.
Yeah, you're just in standby mode.
I've got the broadcast on so I can kind of hear it and follow them. And, every once in a while I go, ooh, I cut it close there. Let's get going. Probably shouldn't admit to that. I don't do that a lot, but
No.
I have a few times through the years. Yeah. There's just some days where for whatever reason, you're just plain wiped out.
Yep.
And
it catches up with you too.
Well, it's interesting. People would think, Mondays have got to be the worst. It's Tuesdays that are the worst, because when you go to bed and you get up Monday morning, you're the most rested you're going to be all week. So I actually find that I do pretty well on Mondays, but by Tuesday I'm fully back in it. And I find like those days, like, whew, that's tough. Yeah.
Let's say if you could go back in time and give your 15-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I don't know if I've got an answer for that one. That's a good question.
It's a tough one. I have like 50 answers for myself.
I think some of the things that I would change, I think I'm better for having experienced and lived through it,
right?
For better or worse, So I would, I don't even know. I might just not give the advice. I think
just say do it.
Well, and that there's something to be gained from mistakes. You don't want to make a ton of them and keep repeating them, but part of maturing is recognizing your faults, owning them, and trying to become a better person. I said to you a little while ago, I'm still not sure I figured out what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, but I found something that I love doing. So, I don't know what I would say to him. I'm just not sure. It's a good question.
What kind of guy was he?
Pretty laid back. Yeah, pretty laid back. I think that's kind of how I am naturally.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. One of the things as I said earlier, one of the things I love about television news is the pressure, the immediacy of it. But it kind of goes and fits and starts. There's moments where you're just going 100 miles an hour with your hair on fire, and then there's times where you're maybe between a broadcast and you're off the gas a little bit and you're having a good time in the office talking about whatever. And I think that suits both aspects of my personality. I'm serious. I'm committed to doing a good job. I feel a huge responsibility to get it right for our viewers. Mm-hmm. I take that very seriously. Whether it's the right score of the Bills game 20 years ago, or the important information about getting your kid to school on a bus, this morning. To me, that's really important. I do take that seriously. I try not to take me seriously. I'm pretty laid back. I try to have fun, and I don't ever want it to be too serious. I feel like because the newsroom can be such a stressful place, and we deal with things that are tough, things that are tough to talk about and have to share with other people.
Yeah.
That you need a little bit of relief from that. You got to be able to have some fun too, and so that suits me because I like to have fun and joke around. But as you said, when that red light goes on, I want to be present in the moment and at my best. So I don't know. It kind of suits me from that standpoint. I would say that I'm kind of both those guys. I'm serious-minded, but I love to kid around. And anybody who spends enough time around me will. 5 minutes will tell you that. I'm always looking for a good joke.
And you can tweet your jokes to Mark Gruba at.
Yeah.
So people can find you on Channel 8 in the mornings from 5 a.m. to like noon or something like that.
Yeah. So 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. News 8 at sunrise, and then the local cut-ins until 9 a.m. and then the noon broadcast 12 to 12:30, and then hopefully out the door shortly thereafter. Most days I can get out at a reasonable hour.
And at some black tie event somewhere with a microphone and good intentions.
Yeah, and shaking you down for your money so we can help a great cause. And having some laughs along the way.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming in, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's been too long, but it was fun.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.